Before I call the meeting to order, I would like to say a couple things about two people who served on this board either recently or long ago. One is Barbara Snelling. She passed away a couple weeks ago. She was one of the original board members here at CVU back in the 60s. And then just recently, last week, Jonathan Milne, a former colleague of ours who retired from this board in March of this year, only to have been diagnosed with cancer and died just recently. And I would just like to have a moment of silence for these two individuals. Thank you. Okay. It is 7:33 roughly, and I'd like to call to order the CVU school board meeting. And I believe that we have some adjustments to the agenda, and I know that Cindy has two.
I need to add item 5.6 baseline budget. That's just to distribute the budget.
You mean 5.7? I have a 5.6.
Okay, I'll be 5.7. And 7.2 maybe, scheduling a CVU board meeting on January 19th for
January 19th meeting.
And are we adding the executive session?
Yes, and that was my last thing. We are having an executive session at the end of this meeting. So, Cindy, that's just, you're going to be distributing the baseline budget for CSSU. Okay.
CSSU or CVU?
CVU, sorry.
Does get confusing, doesn't it?
We already saw the other one.
That's right.
Okay, we have our adjustments to the agenda. Do I have any communication from the audience? Anyone? Nope. And Lucy, would you like to introduce our new board member, please?
Yes, this is Laura Busher. She's our new junior student council representative for school board.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome. Would you like us to go around and say who we are? Because we don't always have our names in front of us. Want to start?
Hi, I'm Kathy Kahn, host.
Ray Maynard from Heinsberg. Gene McHugh from Williston.
Jean Jensen from Williston. We're just the same person.
I'm Polly, and I'm from Williston. You know him.
Principal.
Cindy Kahneman Warren, I'm the CSSU administrator rep for CVU.
Leah Crevady from Heinsberg.
Moon Jonick from Charlotte.
Lorna Jimerson, Charlotte.
And I'm Jeff Solomon from Shelburne.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
And as we move on to 4.1, student education travel, and I believe we have Catherine back again.
Yeah.
No. And if you could please just introduce yourselves, because I don't know.
I am Mary Visco. I'm a Spanish teacher here at CVU.
I'm Seth Jensen. I'm also a Spanish teacher here at CVU.
I'm Maddie Collins. I'm the student representative on the travel committee.
You can turn
It's
off.
getting better.
There's a-
Getting better.
Thanks.
Almost there. All right, so would you like me to click?
There we go.
Steve, we're going to take turns.
Okay. Oh, of course.
So, good evening.
Good evening.
We are here tonight to basically just talk about what exactly the International Travel Committee is. I'm going to do first the introduction, then I'm going to talk from the speaker's perspective, and then Seth is going to conclude the presentation. We'll try to be concise. In 2009, the International Travel, it's now the International and National Travel Committee, was formed with the movement to increase 21st century skills and global citizenship. It was brought together to standardize the process of student applications and also trip proposals, to increase the safety of the trips and also to expand the diversity of opportunities within the travel experiences at our school. So the current members right now, there's about 10 teachers from across the curriculum. Tonight you only have 2 Spanish teachers, sorry, we tried to get some more, but here we are, and a French student. So we have 2 students. We have, I think, Kyle, Dominic, and then we have Maddie. And then there's about 11 teachers that come together once a month to talk about trips that are being proposed, trips that are going. It's also, we get together to provide support to other teachers that are leading trips, so that there's a common process that we're all going through. So basically that's kind of what we do as a committee, is that we provide that support and service for the teachers that are leading these trips, so we're all kind of working together. The other, and also to expand travel opportunities, we're not just limited to, going to certain countries. The other thing I want to talk about before I hand it over to Maddie is the accomplishments. Since the travel committee was formed, in 2009, when the committee was formed, there were only, I think, there's 4 trips: a Costa Rica language trip, a Costa Rica biology trip, a trip to Greece, and the trip to Italy through Latin and art. Since this committee has been formed, we've now increased the diversity of the opportunities, which I'm not going to list it because Maddie's just going to show you. We have a world map that'll show you where all the different trips go and what they cover. The other thing that has happened since the committee has been put together is that we have created scholarships for students, and stipends are also given to the teachers because of the incredible amount of work they put forth. The other thing that we've done is that we've gathered data through teacher and student surveys to find out interests and the benefits and also concerns about trips that either students or teachers might have. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to talk about why teachers create these opportunities for students. And so one of the best ways to learn is to actually go out and do, to experience new things and to become part of our global community. And while there are many challenges that are a result of this, including the time commitment both before, during, and after the trip, as well as the amount of work that goes into planning a trip and preparing for a trip, and the responsibility that you have when you're outside of our community to represent CVU, the rewards are incredible. And this traveling is a life-changing experience. It expands your knowledge of the world. It makes you a better citizen, a part of our global community, and it can be really inspirational and motivational because the learning is extremely relevant to our lives. It can motivate you to pursue something, to further invest your time in a subject or topic that you find interesting that you can learn about through travel. And also, it creates this ripple effect. It's not just the individual that's affected by travel, but it affects the family of the individual, the friends, and the whole community because you're talking about this. And you're sharing what you've learned and what you've gained, which can inspire others to want to travel as well. So there are many reasons why we travel, and there are different types of opportunities that CVU offers, and those include, first of all, the academic component, extending what you do in the classroom to outside of the classroom. So you're learning about what you would be learning in school, but you're just in a new situation outside of the classroom. The second is service, so becoming more aware of what's going on, helping around and participating in community service. The third is immersion, to experience a new culture by actually putting yourself in their shoes and speaking the language and connecting with natives. The fourth is cultural awareness. We become better global citizens and we become more tolerant when we travel to other cultures and to other people that are outside of ourselves, and also it offers a great opportunity for personal growth. We travel to learn about ourselves and our interests and to expand what we know. So now we'll go through the scope of opportunities that CVU offers. So we have a trip, Shakespeare in England, which is a travel seminar, and so then we also have another England, Ireland, and Wales trip, which is for first-time travelers to have that experience of getting out of the country. We have a Costa Rica trip for language, immersion, and homestay. The China trip for language and culture. We have a trip to Ireland for the business department. A Denmark trip, which is an exchange, so we actually have Denmark students come here as well. Then we have a trip to the Dominican Republic, which is for language, immersion, and service. A trip to Peru for history and a culture travel seminar. And a trip to Italy for art, history, and culture. So that's a wide range of the trips that we offer, and that's continuing to grow. And so you can see that it's not just focused in one area, but we have trips going all over the world.
I'm going to talk about some of the obstacles that we're faced with in developing these trips, both from teacher perspective and also from a student perspective, and then what some of those solutions might be that have allowed us to create more opportunities for students. The first, obviously, is time. There's a lot of time that goes into planning a trip. Usually it's at least a 2-year process before we take a trip that the teachers are discussing what we're going to do. We're looking into prices, where we're going to go, setting up the itinerary, getting the group together, and the entire application process. And also, we set up meetings, obviously, before we go to front load a lot of the information. That takes time. And then clearly, when we're on the trip, we're missing some school. And usually that's just a few days, but that's also something that we need to plan for in terms of getting sub-plans together and then being with our students when we're away. The other side of that, too, is personal, where we're away from our families as well when we're traveling with students. From a student perspective, the time issue is missing school as well, which can be a big deal, especially when students are involved in AP courses and things of that nature. They're also missing sometimes activities or sports, which it's hard to balance all of those things together. The next thing is cost. These are expensive trips. We have everything from a $1,900 trip to a $4,000 trip, and that's a big obstacle, as we all know, one of the biggest. We have had the great fortune to have some scholarships available to us, and when they were first available, there were 2 full scholarships per trip, meaning that if your trip cost $2,000, you would get $4,000, enough to cover 2 of the students. And that's been reduced over time. Now each trip receives a flat $2,000, and they can do anything they want with it. But that, again, is limiting some opportunities for students. Student interests. We've also talked, let's see, I think we skipped around a little bit here. So another thing is the limited opportunities. We would like to offer things to all students that have an interest, and clearly we can't do that. So what we've done is we put out a survey to students to see what those interests are, and hopefully we can find some teachers that would be interested in leading trips that would focus on some things that aren't currently available. Some of the solutions that we've talked about are results of this committee work. We've done a teacher survey, which has identified some of these obstacles, and the student survey. And basically, it's come down to time and money. Those are the two big obstacles that we're looking at. So we need to find a way that we can find some solutions creatively that will make more things available. So as we look, the next slide, I think, at the CVU mission, this committee and these opportunities, we think, blend really nicely with what CVU is trying to do as a whole. Learning is obviously an important part of what we do here, and how to interact with the world as a global citizen actively and collaboratively. And you can see that in some of those images. We're working with people side by side. Living in a collaborative community and experiencing a new culture responsibly and respectfully. Thinking about themselves and their world in relation to the broader global community, creatively and critically. And contributing new perspectives and enhanced understandings of citizenship positively to their community. And you can see some examples of that here. Playing music alongside some people in Costa Rica, and then also building a house in the Dominican Republic. So in order to meet the objective of the travel committee, in order to support a variety of annual offerings to engage the greatest number of students possible, that's what we're trying to do. That's our goal. And to this end, we offer a variety of international travel opportunities at different price points, anywhere from the $1,900 to the $4,000, with a range of purposes. We have immersion, service, we have cultural experiences as well. So we're trying to diversify everything that we're offering to our students. We've identified some obstacles, and we've also identified some solutions that we hope will give some more opportunities to our students in the future. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for this group? Lynn, go for it.
How many kids, I'm assuming we don't do all these trips all 1 year, but on average every year, how many kids are taking part in these trips? And do kids get to go on more than one trip, or are they kind of one and done?
Typically, the trips are on a 2-year rotation, so it's hard to judge how many are going, because also we're adding trips. Some of the trips that were mentioned haven't gone in a few years, so it's hard to get a good number, a representative number. And some students have gone on several trips. Part of the application process, there's a place to identify whether you've been on other CVU trips. And priority is often given to the students that haven't been on trips. But there are some students that have been able to go on several trips. Yes.
This year, I think there are about 125 kids going in between February and the April trips. And next year, I think right now there are 3 trips going out. That'll be probably 75 to 80 kids.
Yes.
Are the times that the trips don't fill, or do all the trips fill to capacity with students?
I think for the most part, they have filled the capacity.
The only trip I think that hasn't filled has been the China trip in the past. 'Cause I think it was being offered every year, and that was going to get moved to a 2-year. But we don't know if that's going to fill.
Go ahead, Leah.
So I noticed that when you said that you changed the name of your committee to international and national, but I didn't see any national opportunities. Everything was out of the country, and so I'm wondering what you're doing in terms of thinking about national trips.
There is the Habitat for Humanity trip.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't put that one up there. That
Okay.
is a good point.
What the board asked for last year, I think, was kind of the scope of the international trips. But
Right.
the committee is looking at expanding national opportunities alongside the flexible pathways. What can we offer that's closer to home at a much lower price point?
Right, I think that was probably, maybe it came out as being, wondering about international trips, but a lot of it that stemmed, at least from my perspective, from the fact that it limits opportunities by cost. So, you know, especially now, as you were pointing out, that you had more resources for scholarships and now the dollars are less. Based on the cost of the trips, it sounds like only the $1,900 trip is a trip where you could actually get 2 human beings to go on that trip, or no, one for the $2,000 that you get, as compared to what you had before. And one of my concerns as a board member is thinking about more opportunities for more kids. And these are somewhat exclusive by cost, by what you might need to be able to have in your, what you might have to have in your background in order to go on those trips. So I totally get the value of those, but I'm also thinking about the greater community and how we can expand opportunities for more.
That's kind of why the committee was formed, because
Yeah.
it was such limited opportunities.
Yeah.
And now that we have been formed, it has expanded. I think it's on.
Well, internationally, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking also
Yeah,
about
also
national and more things that are more accessible to more kids.
Yes?
Just to follow up on your point about nationals, I didn't see anything on there about the Holocaust trips, the trips to Montreal that the French teams take.
Montreal.
And those are probably considered field trips,
Are those
not travel,
field
or
trips,
how does that
or
work?
Princeton Model Congress.
So again,
Right.
what we were asked to do, what we were tasked to do, was to give the scope of the international opportunities. We have a PMC trip going Wednesday afternoon for the weekend down to DC. We have the Holocaust
Top of the
and Human Behavior
So this
trip
really
that's in
is a
DC this week.
subset of everything that's available.
The travel committee has changed their name because we are looking to expand travel within the U.S. over to the Adirondacks, within Vermont. But our understanding of what you folks were looking for was the international piece, and so that's what they focused on.
Yep.
We have opportunities we have a Quebec trip, we have Montreal trips that go out.
Yeah, Quebec was on the list,
Yeah, so was Montreal.
and Montreal is too.
And I think it's important to note that, as Meredith said, the number of trips and the purpose of the trips has really increased since this committee has been formed internationally, but I think there are quite a few more trips that have gone nationally. And maybe that's just a shoot off of people wanting to do more trips and being more aware of what's out there, but I think there are more national trips as well.
And do you guys do any fundraising for this, or if you have that scholarship money, do you split it up between a few different kids and have the group fundraise to help everyone go?
I think that depends.
on the trip.
It depends on the trip. We can
And the
speak
leader.
for our trip. We have organized the Dominican Republic trip, and we've been able to split that up, but we've also been able to sort of fund a couple more ourselves because of the price has been a little bit cheaper. And that's because we do everything. We're the travel agents, essentially. We do all of it.
Kim, just to answer that, I do know that the Italy trip is doing several fundraisers
So
to
it's a
support that
France
trip.
too. Did you have a question?
Go ahead, Jean. I know, you're just waiting.
It was the national, international exam.
No, I just, I maybe we should have been more clear. What I'm really interested in is we as a board need to, and this is great, you guys, and you're an awesome presenter, Maddie. Thank you. But, you know, I think as a board we need to kind of understand why we do these trips and plan them intentionally, you know, rather than someone comes up with a great idea and wants to go somewhere, so we go. So I would look forward to the committee kind of thinking that through that, and then the big one that I think several of us are really interested in is the whole equity issue. If we have kids who are from families who can comfortably afford these trips and they go on 3, and meanwhile we have other kids who don't go on any, there's some inequity that some people on the board don't think is a problem, some of us do. And that's why, you know, it's not just sort of intentionally from a curriculum point of view, but intentionally from a socioeconomic perspective as well. If we're really going to do it, if it's important to the education of the kids, then by definition it has to be accessible to all of our students, not just some. And I don't think we've ever really had a hard conversation about that.
And that's a big reason why the committee was started when Sean was here in 2009, to really think about expanding those opportunities. And the first, I know the Peru trip, we recruited students who we knew had not traveled outside of the U.S. The Denmark trip that's going this year has 3 students who never traveled beyond Canada. And the England, Ireland, Wales trip last year had 2 students that I know who had never done any international travel and were on solid or decent sized scholarship for those trips.
Mhm.
So I know that the teachers who plan those trips look for that diversity and look to bring students on board. In particular, students who might think that they wouldn't have that as an opportunity. So that's a really thoughtful process that the trip planners go through. And I think what it came down to in the early discussions of the group, and I think I got a little bit of a flavor for last year when we were presenting the Galapagos trip, the conversation about it. Someone in here said, everybody should go. We should have travel opportunities for everybody, which I love that idea. I don't know if you've heard Matt Dunn talk about that. He's got some pretty cool ideas about that, but that would be challenging financially. But the question becomes a little bit, is it better to have more of our students have these experiences that may be, for some of the students, life-changing, and try to balance that with the students who could go on 3 trips or 2 trips in a year, to get to that number, that number 30 that kind of reduces the cost for everyone, or that number 25 that reduces the cost for everyone. So.
I was going to jump in and mention the importance of our graduation standards. I think if, as a school, community, and certainly I hope as a board, the intentional focus on our graduation standards for our students, getting very clear about what we want our students to be expert in when they walk across the stage at graduation, as opposed to, I think, in the past where, again, our expectations for student learning were wonderful, but we had 15 expectations for student learning that broke down into 15 to 20 different subcategories, and there was no connection between those expectations for student learning really and graduation, because we just hadn't put the emphasis yet on a graduation that was something else or other than credits. And I think when you look at the graduation standards, we're going to be presenting a draft of the graduation standards in May. You will see a focus on citizenship and global citizenship. And I think with that intentionality, and also with the focus on personalized learning plans, that's going to help us as we shift our schedule, as we shift our structures to really say, hey, has this kid had this opportunity? Has this kid in my advisory traveled? We aren't asking those questions right now. And I think as a school, we're starting to move in that cohesive way that you're talking about, Jean, where it's not just like, sort of catch as catch can, but it's, no, we're going to have this filter and we need to think about this with every kid because we care about it. But the filter is now, instead of 15 times 15, it's a little more realistic. And that helps with CSSU and the CSSU mission statement that was adopted a few years ago. So I have some hope for the future, but I think there are some other systems changes that need to come into place too for all of it to start really making sense.
I appreciate hearing that. I talked to a teacher in Burlington this past weekend because some Spanish teacher told my daughter about these paradors in Spain, and apparently she now needs to go to these paradors in Spain.
You're welcome, by the way.
I didn't even know what a parador was. So, but we're sitting on the lacrosse sideline just chit-chatting, and she said, well, Burlington, it's kind of great. We do our trips at the end of the year, and they're 2 yes weeks, those 2, so you don't have all of the sport conflicts and the time conflicts with APs and stuff. So it's nice that there's an awareness that maybe more needs to change than just, finding funding for all these trips. There's structural things that need to change within that too.
I'll just sort of say that I really appreciate what you're doing because I've been talked out probably politically incorrectly about wanting to make sure that any student here that wants an experience can get it in travel. And my idea was that we're spending about $14,000 plus per student right now per year. Say we took 500 of that and put it into an educational travel fund, by the end of the year, by the end of the 4 years here, that would be $2,000 per student. And you just keep rolling it over, and it's, you know, it would essentially give $2,000 for travel experience for every student at CVU for, you know, I mean, it's not a whole lot. We're already in trouble, $14,000 per student. So 14,500 is not, you know, not significantly different. And I think we can, you know, say that it's important for their graduation standards.
Well, I'm looking forward to 6.2 on the budget. I think this is going to be a very interesting night.
Yeah.
Well, I would
you.
like to.
I know.
I do, just to follow up on what Catherine was saying, it'd be interesting to, if we started keeping track of some of these things that you were talking about, like how many kids really are we providing with an opportunity, really providing with an opportunity that they wouldn't get any other way. And, you know, could we, well, there's two things sort of, I think, are micromanaging from a board, but I would like to see is, I think, unfortunately, I think the trips are starting to have an escalating wow factor. You know, instead of being a reasonable trip that achieves the objectives for a reasonable amount of money, they're all like, how can we be cooler than the last trip?
Right.
So we need to, and I don't think you can put a cap, because frankly, 3 weeks in China is gonna cost more, you know, but, want to say something, Leah?
Well, what I was just thinking about was, you know, you said about a life-changing experience. For some kid, a life-changing experience can be going to Appalachia and working with, you know, I mean, I just think that there are lots of ways to have a life,
Right.
And
you
it
know.
could-
Like going to Burlington, you know, I said this, you know, probably 10 years ago. No, I haven't been on the board that long, 6 years ago. I said, you know, going into Burlington and working with kids who are, you know, refugee families is a life-changing experience for some people. So there are just a lot of
But
ways
it shouldn't
to
be
think
dependent on
about
how
it.
much your father makes.
Right,
Right.
it's not dependent
You know?
on how much you make, it's
Yeah.
depending on, what are your goals and how can we provide that for all kids.
I think we ought to think about, the committee ought to think a little bit about perhaps each trip has a required element of having to fund two scholarships. You raise the price of everybody else so that you can fund 2 scholarships. That might be something along that way the committee would should think about. And also, this one I've mentioned to you, Adam, this whole thing, we always hear when we get the trip request, oh, we're all gonna fundraise, this is gonna be great. We never really hear back, did the fundraising happen? You know, are we just, you know, how successful was it? Did it, or just mom and dad just have to write a bigger check? You know, I would just be interested in knowing some of the trips that said that they were gonna do fundraising, especially the ones that say we're gonna do fundraising through service, right? As opposed to selling more stuff to more people, you know, was that successful? Because sometimes that goes into our thinking when we approve a trip. It's like, well, the kids are really gonna go out there and rake leaves for people to save money, that's a learning experience, that would make me feel a little better about the price of the trip, but then I never hear if it actually happens. So that would be good to.
We have 5 going out this year, so that would be feedback that we could certainly get from those trip leaders.
Thanks.
Well, I can certainly, the Italy trip is, you know, like I said, they're doing fundraisers, of which I'm doing one by myself.
Well, so you're not going on the trip. You should
I
be doing it.
know, but I'm just saying
That's
is
my
that,
point.
you know.
Are we eating a little bit of citrus around the holidays? Is that one of this? Is that?
No.
That's the France.
You
Yeah.
France?
As long as it's not wrapping paper, that
Yeah,
one.
not wrapping.
No, because I'm gonna come back to this board and sell you tickets to the Italian dinner that we're having at the Arts Night.
So how do we come back around to this stuff? Is this,
it's
do we
great.
put this
Yeah,
back
great
on
job.
the agenda?
Thank you. Got us,
Thank you guys.
as you can
Thank
see, it
you.
gets us exercise.
Well, you wanna know something
About
is
it.
maybe, after the, end of, this year, you find out how successful the fundraising has been for the trips and maybe a small report in the fall about.
Or what if we just put it in the principal's report at the end of the year?
Oh, yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Lovely.
But I would like to, think about the work plan for next year to hear a broader one, Catherine. It seems like you had a more narrow scope in mind that we might have steered you a little bit wrong. I'm interested in the broader picture.
And
so.
I would say that there are, from the Working with Refugees, there's a new club this year that has, I think, 50 kids who are working in Burlington. It's called the Refugee Outreach Club. Is it, right?
Good.
Rock? So there, what I was hoping, what we were hoping would come across today is kind of that range of possibilities. Not that they're all kind of, I think, Jean, you said the wow factor. There are some that are like Galapagos in China. Those are much more maybe exotic to some people. There are the DR, the DR trip, which is about service and speaking
I love
Spanish.
that one. It's my
Um,
favorite trip. The
and they
Dominican
all
Republic.
have, I think
all
they
service
all have,
immersed.
they all have value, and they all offer different, different learning experiences to students. And it might be interesting at some point for you to see right from the Rock Club that's working with the refugees in Burlington through the Habitat trip, which was started years ago to provide a less expensive spring break travel opportunity for kids. That goes down to the Carolinas all the way through.
Just one last thing. I remember a few years ago, didn't we have reports back, the students who went on a trip come before the board and speak to us? I mean, we haven't done that in a while.
Used to do that after a number of trips. I remember a couple
Yeah,
of
our
different
group.
Maybe
groups
it's all
you
too
guys
jealous.
did one year.
First year, yeah, the first time.
Could I just speak really briefly about the fundraising piece? While it does reduce the price for some students, it is a lot of work.
Right.
It's another obstacle for the teachers because they have to take a majority of that burden on. And that's just something to keep in mind, that while it may make it available to some students, at the same time, that's creating a significant amount of time from our perspective. And
Yeah,
so
and frankly,
that's
the-
why we decided to do a trip that was reduced price, us taking on the majority of the burden in organizing the trip, so that the students wouldn't have to do that fundraising piece.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, don't get me wrong, this board is not in favor of fundraising, because we already ask so much money out of our community. To have them constantly have people banging on their doors selling oranges is not our intent. So fundraising is not, I don't think this board is big on fundraising for these trips. It's just, when you come and tell us that's part of the deal, did it happen? I agree with you.
This might sound a little bit like a strange recommendation now, but possibly for next year, depending how the board feels about our graduation standards, that our presentations each month are based on our graduation standards and then the opportunities that a student
Very
has
much.
to experience those.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about what we're really asking about tonight isn't travel. I mean, travel is somewhat of a superficial way to talk about what we're talking about. We're talking about global citizenship and our ability for our students to interact with the world and become citizens at
Yep.
large. When we're talking about refugees and we're talking about travel, that's what we're really talking about.
Well,
So-
because frankly, we could do trips through access.
Yeah.
They don't have to be done through the school system, right? I mean, if it's just to travel, there are other ways to let kids have that experience. But if it's part of the public school system, it should be leaning towards a goal of the public education.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
You too.
I look forward to figuring out that 500 a kid a year.
We'll figure that out
Yeah,
before
me
now.
too.
That
I
would
can't wait.
that would help the committee.
Lauren's gonna write
See
a
you next
check.
month.
No problem.
Okay, on to 5.0, reports to the board. Adam, you're up with the principal's report.
Okay, it's only gonna be about 45 minutes now. I'm just kidding.
Well, we have that. We have that.
Nice beard, by the way.
Yeah, right.
So I'd like to just, again, Russ Aceto, Jeff O'Hara suckered me into the No Shave November. I aspire to look like Seth someday, but I don't think it's gonna happen. So. I may have a mustache by the end of the month. So I'm just gonna call attention to two items, and then I thought it'd be interesting for you to have some impressions of your own on the data. That's why I provided it, not for me to tell you what to think, but see what you think. So the two pieces I just comment on are, first of all, the graduation standards. So we've come up with a process through program council to have our graduation standards go through a vetting process this year, where each department's gonna be able to look at the graduation standards. Students are, parents are. We're gonna get that feedback back to program council, put out another draft, get that draft back out to stakeholders, bring it back in, and then bring it to the board by May. So, again, perhaps next year we would have presentations focused on those.
I guess
Is
we-
that questions, that
Yes.
current standards to new proposed standards? What comparing?
So I, this year, inherited a draft of graduation standards that were put together by the faculty last year. I thought that the board had seen those. I don't think the board has seen those, so.
Not in a comprehensive way. We talked about them, but not in a, this is
Right.
what they are.
So they're, I mean, they were always in draft format. There was never any question about that. So what we are going to do is to bring some standards that are less drafty and more formalized, but also with a process. I mean, it's important that graduation standards have the ability to grow as our thinking and as our pedagogy and our thinking grows. So I'll give you an example. Montpelier, we had a process where we had a delayed start. So we had PLC groups or professional learning communities that were as teachers that met every Wednesday morning for an hour. Each one of those groups was focused on one graduation standard and was looking at student work that was tied to those graduation standards. By the end of the year, you learn a lot about student work. You learn a lot about your practice. You also learn a lot about the graduation standard itself in terms of what works, what doesn't work. So we would take a week or two at the end of June and intensively work on those graduation standards and then put out the draft for the following year so teachers could use those to plan over the summer.
Well, would that be as a baseline to what you currently have? I mean, I understand you're drafting and discussing, but.
Yes, we do currently have a draft of standards that teachers are using this year. They're not using them very comprehensively.
We don't have graduation standards per se. We don't, I mean, our graduation standards are Carnegie units.
Right, right. So I should rephrase
English,
that.
math,
Yeah,
science.
yeah, I'm just.
I should say
looking for-
learning expectations.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay.
I'm just calling
Which
them
nobody,
graduation standards because I
but
really
we
hope
have
they
learning
become.
expectations, but they were never, I don't believe we ever used them as graduation. We didn't say you didn't graduate because you don't have 12.2.
No.
Right? I
Exactly.
mean, that's sort of this whole evolution that we're going through right now is standards-based learning and standards-based assessments, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked about them a little
So,
bit, Kathy,
good
but we
question.
haven't seen them.
Haven't seen them, okay.
But we're going to.
It sounds like in what you wrote that there's actually two parallel sets of standards, and you're trying to sort of weave it into something that makes sense together.
There are two sets of standards. They are almost identical, but they're articulated differently.
Okay.
And I was going to bring them, but I also didn't want to get into the weeds with them yet.
That's fine.
I was just wondering that all of our stakeholders aren't in the school, really.
Mhm.
I mean, the community's got a pretty big stake in what education we deliver, so is there a way to involve people outside of the school building, besides
Mhm.
parents?
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about that.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will definitely do that.
Not sure how.
I don't think it'd be that hard. I mean,
You invite people that, you know,
Yeah.
that care about education and that might welcome an opportunity to give some
The employers.
feedback.
yeah,
higher learning,
I went down the employers road quickly
Yeah.
when you said that, just
Yeah.
the.
Right.
But also like BTC maybe, or?
Well, colleges, local colleges, local.
Employers? I guess my only other concern was that we don't get, everyone else gets to see it and we get held in, we don't get to see it until May.
Well, you're the final set. Anyone who wants to see it, trust me, I can send them to you. but- I don't think they would shock you, let's put it that way.
I don't know.
And then the only other piece that I was going to comment on in the principal's report was the sustainability piece. That it is fun working in this building right now. The amount of creative energy that's out there for things like flexible pathways, for re-envisioning what personalized learning plans look like and what grad challenge looks like, and then just to see that creative energy being pushed towards our values, and that sustainability piece is really exciting right now. And just the prospect of, I envision that lower field down there as having a building of some type with some type of farm around it that has a
Greenhouse.
project-based learning component to it, where
Yeah.
classes are connecting to it, where, kids are.
Is there a pond
We're
over there?
we're not
Yeah,
gonna-
right there.
water. Water
Yeah,
for the-
not
that's
quite
good.
in the pond.
Oh, okay.
We're not gonna have farm animals, are we?
We might,
Yeah,
yeah.
you might.
We'd
Oh,
like
yeah.
to.
Good
Well,
idea.
If we had solar panels, the goats could.
Lucy's
you
like,
know,
yeah,
Right.
I'm graduating almost.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Raise me some cactus.
Goats are great.
Who's gonna take care of them during the summer?
Yeah. Oh, it's easily done. I
Adam.
mean,
Adam, okay.
the way that you do it is you set up science courses in the summer so that students are earning credit and also being paid.
Have to be
And
your-
then
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
using,
that's
Money.
good.
again, you're using the compost from the cafeteria, you're eating your own greens all year, you're eating your own eggs, you're,
It could be a community garden that hosted by CVU for
Mm-hmm.
people in Winesburg that don't have enough room to have their own garden.
a time of need garden would be really, you could do as well.
Exciting.
So these are, the ideas are coming quickly off my tongue because
I'm thinking you can get
they're all
people
over the
Farmers of
state.
America and
Yeah.
student business group and all that too, involved too, at different aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to engage the community, so
It's very good
so
stuff.
we'll see what happens.
And pets. Kids who want to learn about medicine, it's very nice.
Yeah, it's a consciousness change. And it's seeping into the school, and it sounds
Can I
like
ask you
you're
about the
picking it up.
VSAC survey?
Sure.
I like the numbers, I guess I'm, having very high standards. My high school
Why are
cares
these
about me is
100%?
only
Is this-
80%.
This is the VSAC.
These are teenagers we're talking about here.
Right, but looking, disagree is only
Let's
4.4,
remember-
so there's that
remember this is
neutral.
They're neutral, I can
Yeah.
go with neutral, yeah.
And this was a substantial number of students, right up around, I don't think did I include the total number of students?
No.
It was 249, if my memory serves me
Which is-
correctly, so.
I thought it was interesting that, so the in the ninth grade, 97% of students plan to go to college, and then, what do we have at the end? 80,
Right.
so somewhere along the line, something like 20% of our students decide, maybe it's not for me after all.
So how did VSAC administer this to the seniors? Just curiously.
I actually don't know, I wasn't here when they did it.
Okay.
Good question.
Because I was like, how'd they get the, was it through maybe college night or something?
I know that there was, Patty mentioned it to me, and I remember thinking, that was substantial, but I don't remember how. I just wanted to point out one thing about the MAPS 9 data too. I think we gathered that through Naviance, as I noted there, and then I'm thinking about using Naviance and jump rope, as you saw before, as bodies of evidence upon which kids will reflect when they're thinking about graduation standards and they're thinking about their personalized learning plans. The comment earlier about making sure that we have data on all kids, that's a great spot to get. This survey is so fast, and then you have such a nice wealth of information. I wish I had included in the MAPS 9 data, there was an open response of name one adult to whom you feel connected in this building. And it was pretty neat to go and look at each individual kid and who they pointed out as their connection. And it made me feel good, at least. A lot of power there.
I was concerned that critical thinking ranked as the lowest value.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not totally surprised by it, but I also think the way that it's written in the survey, it might lead one to say,
What do they call
in
it?
comparison to my family or, friends.
Okay.
But
Also ninth grade. Developmentally,
Right.
it's developmentally not that unusual. Maybe for ninth grade.
But I think if we get clearer about our graduation standards,
Then it'll become more.
then I'm hoping that when we look up on the walls, we see critical thinking there, just like we have that mission statement up there from CSSU, that it's part of the vernacular.
Are there any other questions for Adam on his report?
I have one other little note.
Go ahead.
You might notice Jason Burgess over there.
Yes.
And so he just couldn't quit you. So he actually has very kindly responded to my request to help me put together a budgeting committee of students. And
that's
so
great.
he is tomorrow going to the State House to watch the report on Act 46.
Wow.
And part of his graduation challenge project is going to be researching how budgeting is done in schools, what the state scope is, and also leading a committee of other students. So.
Wow, cool.
Mhm.
So you jilted
Thank
us
you.
for Mr. Valentine?
Yeah.
Okay, we can take it.
Great idea.
It's cool.
It's very
you.
good.
Okay, if there are no other questions for Adam, we can do the CSU debrief.
I guess a couple of highlights. One is, we touched on, we've been trying to do a little bit of board training in each of the CSSU boards, and Cindy nicely took us through some discussion around voting, which I was actually kind of prepared to do 2 hours ago, and now I'm no longer prepared to do anymore. But essentially, it's wait, here it is.
Cindy, did you
Wait,
have extra copies of that?
I do, but I gave them back to Sandy.
Oh, good.
I think, but let me check my bag.
Essentially, the discussion was around voting in general, but just a reminder that unless it's a good reason not to vote, all directors should vote on all motions. It's the duty of every member who has an opinion on a question to express his or her vote. He or she can abstain because we can't actually force people to vote. But
Okay.
the expectation is that you've been, I'll just say it's in the expectation is that you've been elected to have an opinion.
I'll tell you what is I only have one hard copy, but I will send a copy of this to everybody. It's kind of the rules on voting. Okay?
I just thought it was pretty simple. It's not very
Right.
complicated, but the fact is that you need a majority of those present to pass a motion. So if you abstain, you're essentially voting no. Okay?
Right, and go ahead.
Sandy sent out a copy this afternoon.
Oh, she did send it
Yes.
all out to everyone? Okay, good.
It was late, it was in the middle of the afternoon.
I think the one thing I learned from this discussion is you can
Holly,
have.
will you send it anyway, because actually I didn't have it in my inbox.
Yeah.
Mine's not there either.
I'll resend it to everybody. The one thing I learned from this discussion is you can't have any abstentions. So like, when we ask for yay or nays, that's all the chair can do. You can't ask about abstentions.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I didn't really, maybe you
I didn't
clarify
get
that,
that
because
either.
we were getting a little confused with recusing
Excusing
yourself and abstaining. So one thing that I did learn was that if you have to recuse yourself from voting because there's a reason that you should not be voting for conflict of interest, you really should state that right up front. So don't let us get all the way through the discussion and then say, oh, by the way, I'm gonna, because it would be good for the rest of the board during the discussion to know that you shouldn't be participating. Or that you
If you don't vote, you vote yes.
Right, that was interesting. But I think.
No, but you vote no. If you don't vote,
If you don't vote, you
it's a
vote
no
yes.
vote.
Yeah, if you don't say anything, your
vote.
vote
no,
is
no.
a yes.
Oh, that's right, if you don't say anything at all. And a voice vote, right.
And I think I remember learning a long time ago that you ask for the yeas, the nays, and if anybody
Yes, I
abstained.
thought so too. Mhm.
So that you do get a tally of how many people were there and voted.
So,
Quick review research I did was that actually board chair isn't supposed to ask that. 'Cause
Really?
It's a yay or a nay. Because they should have stated up front that they were abstaining. That's the purpose of declaring before the vote that I will not be voting because of either the conflict of interest or at the end of the discussion. The example being, I don't feel informed enough to vote, so I will not vote on this. So it's already proclaimed before there's a vote, to Ray's point, because then either in a voice vote, if you don't state one or the other, it's assumed to be a vote with the majority.
And it's interesting. I've never-
so the other important thing that we talked about is that Elaine is having some surgery in January and will be out for an extended leave, and that we appointed Megan as her,
Deputy, assistant,
what was the actual term?
assistant.
Acting superintendent while she's out, so that's important to know, because we really want to make sure that Elaine stays home and takes care of herself, so we wanted to have a good, strong backup for that, so. And lastly, legislative breakfast date, so the legislative breakfast is the last Monday of January, which is the 25th. Usually it's early, 7:30 or something.
Yeah, it's early,
Yeah.
it goes for about an hour.
Jean, what is that?
We invite all of our legislators, all of our representatives and senators to come and we grill them on important topics.
Over cost.
We have
Over
nothing to
bagels.
Right, and there's, it's usually, nothing.
Should be a hot one this year.
Come.
Yes.
Yes, you're invited.
Can.
Last Monday in January.
Last Monday.
Last Monday of January.
They're abstaining.
I wish they would just.
Jean, do you have anything else to add on that CSSU
I don't think so.
debrief?
Were the NESDEC projections in everybody's package? I can't
Yes,
remember.
you should have gotten them in the Colt report, just so the long and short of it is declining enrollment.
Unless you're Heinsberg.
That gets right to the point.
Except for Heinsberg, they're great.
All right.
Okay, the next report is 5.3, the first quarter FMR, and that is 5.3.
I was in California and 4:30 in the morning was just too early for me, so I can't help it this
Yeah.
month.
So, I think there's, you can read the report, but one of the things that is to our favor in the FMR is that because the state, I don't want to say they overcharged, but they had a pot of money left over in their, I believe in their special ed revenue, that they rebated each school based upon, how many special ed students you have and so forth and so on. They rebated CVU $129,000. I know, go figure.
That could be a lot of student trips.
I know.
How many? Quick.
At least. Oh, boy.
So, we do have a favorable budget, currently at 55,000, which is nice. We don't know what we're doing with that 129. I think we can apply it to the budget, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true, Adam? Not sure where that goes.
Well, it's just revenue
Yeah.
offsetting.
Yeah.
It's fine.
State aid or something.
I'm always amazed, food service used to always run in the positive, and it's running in the negative these days. The other thing that came out of, it's not only the finance committee, but it's also the facilities committee, thank you, Jean, is we sat down with Kurt and had him project out things that for the next, 10 years, what will be needed for, as repairs or, mostly it's repairs to the building, and he's enumerated them. I think the challenge for us will be is where do we find this money? And he gave a pretty detailed account about what's happening when. The 5-year, and his 5-year capital improvement. The one thing I do want to point out is that the parking lot patches and also it has to do with the field repair. Remember, we were going to do that one experiment.
Right.
That has been postponed. It was supposed to be done this year, has been postponed to next year. Those monies have been set aside for that, especially for the field. But those RFPs will be going out and they will be bid on and they will hopefully be done next year, so. Does anyone have, the other thing that's kind of on hold is the building security system, because you recently formed a security committee, safety committee. I think we just need to figure out what we want to do for security in this building, and so we haven't really allotted a whole lot of money for that yet, because based upon the recommendations of that committee.
I could use some direction from the board about what you want to see as the next step.
Okay.
So.
For safety, you mean?
Yeah, my understanding is that that committee has 3 or 4 recommendations ready to go to be submitted to
So
you.
I don't, I was voted to go on
Yeah.
that. I still haven't gotten anything, no notes, nothing. So I don't even know how to advise you because there's been no
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
or schedule. So
Mm.
I think it would be great to see where they're at as a
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it should probably be something we discuss as part of the budget.
Is it money related
There's
or
money involved.
It's less about money and it's more about,
climate?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So if it's urgent, I guess we should try to find a way to talk about it if it can wait till we get through the
Do you
budget.
want to put that on the February agenda?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me just ask, because I just thought of it, so, so my understanding is that Williston could potentially be in need of a rather large bond soon. Shelburne's just had one, Williston, assuming Williston can't get its act together fast enough to do it this year, would it make sense, given that long list of maintenance issues, would it make sense for us to potentially have a, $400,000 parking lot bond?
That was discussed.
Yeah.
Because in one of our sheets, which is our capital fund sheet, we only have $67,000, and projected spending for some things for next year is at $340,000.
Right.
So, now, like I said, we do have the parking, or not the parking lot, what's the field has been reserved.
So of that 67, it already assumes we spent the 120 that's on the
Yeah.
field,
Right.
So that's kind of set aside because that's how we did it.
But when, in looking at the paving of the parking lot, I mean, the first time out is possibly $200,000, so.
And if we're doing a bond, we just do the whole thing, I'm sure.
Right.
Or there's also several things on there that seem energy related, and those bonds are always pretty popular. So, I mean, if the board doesn't object, maybe we should have a little discussion about potentially sliding a facilities bond onto it. And it would really be dependent on, as a board, we've generally tried not to compete with the K-8s when they have to go forward for a bond, but,
So you're talking about doing this for March?
yeah.
It's a separate item that we vote on.
Right.
I mean,
So-
for instance, the parking lot is spread out over 1, 2, 3, it's all the way up to 2020.
Well, it was doing it in phases, if I'm not mistaken.
Which
Because we have all
might
the
be,
money.
maybe a good idea, I don't know. but
Or maybe it's more expensive, right?
Or
Sometimes
maybe
you
it's-
come in and do
yeah,
it,
maybe
tear the
it's
whole
good
thing
to
up and
just
do it at once, right?
Sort of do the major part of it.
Do we have a facilities committee? We do,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Would it make sense to have the facilities committee, if that's really what you're looking at, bring it back to the facilities committee and say, what would you reprioritize if we were gonna put forth the bond? Because, just in my mind, if I'm cutting $1 million from an education budget, that I'm putting out a $400,000 bond for a parking lot, it doesn't jive well with me. So maybe if some of those other priorities, maybe some of the other facility priorities, maybe they could be more pressing. I don't know.
that's fair.
That's just
Yeah,
kind of what I'm
it is.
thinking off the top of my head.
So we'll go ahead and discuss it at least?
Yeah, we'll discuss
bring
it
something
in the
back?
facilities
One
committee.
budget meeting?
And maybe Kurt can push it out that we don't have to go for a bond this year. Maybe he can do some patchwork in the parking lot, because there's some, the problem with the parking lot is there's water running under it, which is causing structural damage to the parking lot. So that's what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have anything else to add on the FMR and the facilities report? If not, we're going to go on to Lucy for the student council debrief.
So I earlier introduced Laura, and we're just very excited to have her join the board. As far as CVU announcements, we had a dodgeball tournament last Friday, which was extremely fun. We had the championship game yesterday during advisory. So that was just a great school spirit activity. It's always really, at least from my perspective and many other students, it's really exciting to have these sorts of opportunities where you have all these students come together. So that's really exciting this year. Also coming up today and tomorrow, and then also happening this week, is the Princeton Mall Congress trip, which is leaving tomorrow, and the Holocaust trip, which left, I think, Monday morning. And they're in DC right now, and they'll be heading to New York City soon. So that's very exciting. In terms of student council activities, we're working on Cafe for a Cause right now, which is taking place on December 10th. So we are donating all of the proceeds from all of the purchases and all that funding from the cafe on December 10th, and we're splitting that between Pure Water for the World and the Outreach for Earth Stewardship group. So that's very exciting, and we're looking for a business to help match our funds. So we have our fingers crossed for that. And so that's student council is busy organizing that. We're also working on Homework Awareness Week, which we're just continuing to develop. We had goals to do that this week, but we realized that there's a lot of planning that goes into that, so we're pushing it out a little bit, but that's still underway.
Wait, we need to be aware of our homework?
Well, it's a concept that Bill Pinney came up with, and it's basically improving communications between students and teachers as to what the purpose of homework is. Lots of students feel that we get extreme amounts of homeworks at different times of the year, and some of the some of it's good, and some of it seems like busy work for many students. So we're just looking at where's that happy medium, and how do we get students to not be complaining about homework, and how to have not have complaining and just have purposeful conversation.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then winter sports started up this week on Monday. Basketball and wrestling, I think, had tryouts, and then Nordic and Alpine also started. And I know Nordic has been doing preseason for about the last 2 weeks, unofficially without the help of coaches, led by student captains and leaders on the team. And also going on in the school right now is the Thanksgiving food drive, and that's through advisories. Students bring in food, and there's a collection basket in different advisories, and that food will be pooled at the end of the break and given to families who need that food. Another drive that's going on is the winter clothing drive, and this year it's a collaboration between Refugee Outreach Club, which Miss Riley was talking about a little bit earlier, and the Vermont Interscholastic Council is also working together to do that. So not only is it in CVU, it's being extended to other schools in the county, so that's really good. And then also it's the week before vacation, so students are pretty excited. Next week we get our first long break. We get to see family and eat lots of good food, so there's a good vibe in the
Do all
school
that homework.
right now. Yeah, so that's what we have for student council.
Thank you. Are there any other committees that need to report out tonight? Okay, we have 5.6, which is the Act 46 committee report, but I don't believe, we all went to our local board, so I think we're set on that one. Maybe we need to rethink that and not put it on if we're hearing from our local boards. And 5.7, Cindy, you have something for us.
I do. Bob, Adam, Miranda's on my behalf. I pass out your baseline budget. Adam and Bob and I will be prepared to answer questions you may have at the December 2nd meeting.
Is it just one page?
It's just the one page.
Wow, there are a lot of them.
Just
Bring out, bring
I
some.
think you got a lot already.
Bring some up to my
Right. And it's built on the assumptions the board adopted in September. It has not, while Adam has already obviously been thinking about possible changes to it, none of those are reflected at this time.
Thank you.
Did everybody get one on that side?
Yep,
Everybody got
well, yeah. I guess I'll take if anyone has a quick glance and peruse on this, or we can go home and study it
I think that's a
in
good
depth.
idea.
I'm gonna need some help walking out of here tonight. I don't know if this is the right time. What's that, later?
You have a discussion item later.
Okay, good.
Which yours.
The allowable growth percent.
Yeah,
Yes. Got you covered on that.
thank you.
Okay, Shall we move on then?
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask one question? So the meeting is
Sure.
December 2nd.
Pardon me?
Here.
December 2nd.
Where is it?
December 2nd here
Yes.
at 5:30.
Should be on our.
If you look at your agenda.
December 2nd, 140, 142.
Right,
I have it at 5:30 to 7:30.
yeah.
Yep.
Kathy?
And we'll have-
At the,
So what
on
is
the other
this?
side of your agenda is
It
all
always
the,
tells all the
all the
future meeting
meetings.
dates and places.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Patrice.
You're welcome.
And are we gonna have dinner?
What?
Because it's second.
Can I say yes?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can have dinner. Who arranges that?
Sandy.
Yeah, see if it's
Sandy. Okay,
I'll make sure she knows.
yes. Feed us, please. Okay, on to discussion matters. 6.1, policies. We have 6.1.1, job sharing, 6.1.2, educational records, 6.1.3, ELL, and then 6.1.4, restrictive behavior intervention. Does anyone have any comments on any of these policies?
I did, hang on.
You had it on the restrictive behavior
No,
intervention.
I have another one which I thought was too silly to bring up in the CSSU meeting being my,
Never too silly.
from my
Never too
illustrious
silly.
chair position, but is there from a word?
They're from,
Yes.
That was probably there for, where?
It's on
where
education
for?
records,
Yeah.
Where's it,
under
Sue?
definition, access to records.
Yeah. Okay.
Persons determined to have legitimate education interest means those who need to review students' education records or receive information therefrom.
There. It sounds like an attorney.
Jean, only you would catch that.
I know, well, yeah. No, it used to be like David Rath used to do this.
Oh,
stuff.
he was yeah.
He was maniacal
Well,
about
it
it.
is now, I guess.
It is now, right?
Might be one to check.
Now, the other thing, I guess I just have, I'm just interested in our procedure, I guess the same question I asked earlier, but I can ask Adam, is our procedures around restrictive behavior. I mean, I understand the policy, but I think that would be good to know, and Megan may have
is
it
a
covered
word.
here, because she was gonna explain
It is.
There you go.
procedures in general. Lynn?
therefrom is a word.
Yeah, there you go.
It means from that or that place.
So perhaps we could find another word.
It's awkward. It's awkward. There's no way about it.
This, I just remember this restrictive behavior intervention can be important to do right.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it if you're not gonna do it right.
Yeah, if you're not
I think the
trained.
basic procedure is if you don't have the CPI training.
Don't have training, don't do it.
So there are people who are trained in the building with that?
No, I mean, it's basically a non-issue at the high school. I mean, if we get to that point, then, there'd be a police presence that would be using that training. Unless, of course, there was a student with, an IEP or.
That's what I was
plan,
thinking, more
that's-
like
yeah.
that kind of a situation.
Right.
So if they're on an IEP, do we,
So we would have a person who would be a behavior interventionist with us in that situation, who's trained with that student. So,
Do we even have a safe room at the high school?
we do, yeah. And it depends, I mean, the room is safe or not depending on the population. Yeah. That didn't come out right. We have a room that can turn into a safe room if we need it. We just don't have it to have that need right now.
so I think what Megan said was that even the procedures are prescribed by state
Yes.
law. And
Right.
so there's really, so the committee is maybe gonna look at all the references to a procedure. As a board, it would be good for me to know this is not an optional procedure, because procedures are just in that gray area for me. Like, there's policy, which we review and we approve, and then there's procedures that are held at the administrative level, and we may or may not know when they change. And so if you think you have an understanding and it changes, it's not quite as rigorous as the policy changes. So whenever there's something that's an important procedure, I'm just always curious as to what it is.
Does anyone have any other comments on any of these policies? Okay, thank you. 6.2, budget.
Here we go.
Allowable growth percentage. Is this you,
So
Adam?
you want me to start us off?
Sure.
So I sent out an email. So the number that we're looking at right now, so do you feel like you have a good understanding of the allowable growth percentage and what that means? Or should I just review it quickly?
Go ahead and review it.
Okay, so as part of Act 46, they're calling it an allowable growth percentage. I think the term cap is also something that could be applied to the allowable growth percentage. And each school has a percentage that their budget is allowed to grow. If your budget grows over that percentage, then every dollar that is spent beyond that is counted as double for the taxpayers. So our CVU's numbers is 2.2% for growth, but we currently have healthcare projected at a 7.9% increase. So if you look at that 7.9% increase, knowing our budget, 80% of our budget is personnel, 60% of that 2% is already accounted for, just in the healthcare alone. Yeah. Beyond that, we also have a wage increase this year, something like 3.25% that was negotiated. So we're well over that. So basically with our baseline budget, we are $960,000 over the allowable growth percentage. I need some direction from the board this evening about what you want to see in terms of either a reduction, maybe not a reduction. I'm not sure how you want me to proceed with this. And I will tell you that it is, having seen the numbers, I am not sleeping well, particularly when I look at the impact on our program and certainly on our faculty.
Is the understanding, or I guess part of what I'm looking for, just as pushback, and I don't know that we all have that crystal ball, but my sense from listening to what the legislature, and you'll know better, I guess, tomorrow, is that even though they're going to talk, there's not going to be any definitive answer by the time we need to approve a budget. And so is one of the discussions as a board, I guess maybe this is the pushback on you, is that everyone's understanding, and are we going to look at maybe doing two budgets? Are we going to, one that if they decide to do away with the cap? I mean, what approach as a board are we going to take? Like, how are we thinking the legislature's going to look at this? Or do we just plow through and make all these cuts?
The caveat I would put on that is that whatever I'm presenting publicly here, I'll be having discussions with affected staff before then, and I've slated December 10th as the day to have those discussions with people, because you don't necessarily want to do it on Friday, and I think we're meeting on December 16th, and that doesn't give us a lot of time. So, how much anxiety do we want to create within the building? I have answers to that. I'm not sure what the board's answers are.
And Bob just wanted me to caution everybody that the $960,000 is still in his terms, a very, very, very early projection. Right. We still don't have a lot of information from the state. We won't have some key numbers until late December and early January.
I don't see how we can meet their deadlines for forming a thoughtful budget with so much in flux at this point. It's always weird, because usually it takes forever before, VHI tells you how much your health insurance is, or what your special ed. It's always bad, but this is particularly bad. One is that you do hear some politicians talking about wanting to repeal parts or all of Act 46, and of course I'm like, yes, but when that would happen, and whether that would happen in time to rescind the budget cap for next year, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of not fair. I wish we should have our legislative breakfast. We should go to Montpelier and have our breakfast there and be a little bit more direct.
Well, I kind of disagree, Lorna. I'm gonna say that we've lost 100 kids over the last 4 or 5 years, and we really haven't taken any staff out. So do think that this is an opportunity to really look at our staffing and see if it's exactly where we should, if we're doing the right things for our constituents. That said, if we do think we've done everything we can and we only, and special ed's coming down too, so there's some things that are gonna get better, that we are still $400,000 off. I know if I'm convinced that the next dollar is going to really hurt our program, then I say we go to the public with it. We just
Well,
we take it to a vote.
Right,
If it
and
gets
then
down.
you go over the cap and you just,
Right.
knowing it's gonna cost more.
But I do think we have to be able to convince ourselves and convince the public that it's worth raising $2 for every dollar we need, because the alternative is to, really hurt our program at CVU. And I'm not there today, it's the first time I've seen the numbers, so, I don't know where that number is, but, here's.
We can find a nickel here and a dime there, but if we're gonna come up with $900,000, there's only one place to look, and that's in salaries. And
Right.
I'd like to take a good look at any non-teaching staff, any non-teaching people.
Is the language of this Act 46 where every dollar above your cap is taxed at an additional dollar? Is it like the old language where, if you went over the threshold, you voted twice? The first
No.
part, so it's
No.
all one budget number?
Though I don't know, could you go, that would be an option, is perhaps go with 2 articles. But to me, that's suicide. I'd rather go with one and have it go down.
That's why I wondered, because when that happened to us in Charlotte,
Right,
they
yeah.
didn't do the second one, they passed the first
Right.
one.
That's likely.
But Shelburne just did that with their bond, and then both of them passed, so there's
Adam, I guess I'm gonna ask you, are there any programs that you're thinking that we could live without?
At cutting $1 million, you're gonna be living without programs.
Okay.
And maybe
Yeah,
that's,
I mean, that's the bottom
maybe,
line.
when we have lots of budget issues in Charlotte, and when our budget failed the second time, that's what we did. We actually went to the extreme and we said, okay, you guys are asking us to take out $300,000. This is what it means you will lose. And it was that type of knowledge that people then started saying, well, wait a second, we don't want to lose music, we don't want to lose art, all these things. It's kind of hard not knowing what we would lose.
Right.
Right.
So maybe that's.
So you would like
part
to
of the
see me
budget
find the
process.
$960,000 reduction and
Yeah,
bring
but-
that on December?
Well, personally, I mean.
Yeah, I don't think that's unrealistic.
I gave you
numbers.
my, we go around staffing. I would like to see where our staffing is, so I sent you that thing a couple weeks ago, right? We talk about non-teaching positions, like to see, what they are in the building.
Right. In programs that aren't enrolled, low enrollment, we went down that path for a while.
Right, low enrollment kind of stuff. And, are there low enrollment classes that perhaps we have to find another way to provide that for kids that's not,
Right.
they don't get that in the building? That if they really want to have that particular program, they'll have to do it outside the building, but that's what alternate pathways are about. Maybe there's some options there, so.
So is there tolerance though? So the 960, I think, is the high water mark, is what I'm hearing.
We think so, yeah.
We think so. So we think that it's gonna come down. Do we have a ballpark where we think
We
it
don't know
might
that.
be?
No, we don't.
Bob cautioned me that it could go either way.
It could go either way,
Yeah.
so
How?
it could go higher?
How could it go higher?
Yeah, good.
I think when we get our
Depending on
people,
what things, depending on what comes in from the state in terms of equalized pupils.
Oh, the equalized pupil
Yeah.
number could change.
Right.
But the spending won't change.
Right.
Right. The spending will only come down.
Okay, so is there,
The Revit, the allowable growth percentage is still a variable, not the 2.2, but we know what the baseline amount is and what it will cost to do what we're doing today, next year, based on the assumptions. What we don't know yet is the equalized pupil count and how that factors into your 2.2 calculation, and a couple of other key numbers that you always wait for from the state, as we pointed out.
Right. So is there a number that the board would say, okay, we would go and, do the 100%, the 2-for-1?
I wouldn't know until I
Well,
see more data.
You went through this calculation, I think, a couple times ago, that, let's say we were over, let's say 400,000 in the budget. That 400,000 would get taxed at like 2 times the rate, right? But it's spread over 5 towns. So what does that mean for, it's a small amount of money.
But it's a perception thing.
Relatively speaking, but.
Okay, I'm sure there's perception, but, I mean, is it something that we would be willing to discuss? I mean, I don't know what the other town budgets, what the other boards are looking at either, right, with this cap, but.
I think it depends what you're looking at cutting. I mean, I think if you go to your communities and saying, we can no longer do athletics at the school, or, yeah, I think you kind of need to know that.
That gets us halfway there, by the way, I looked at that.
Right, the
All we have to
the
do is
amount
say
of
we're
money in
cutting football
co-curriculars
and we pass
is,
the budget,
wouldn't even
no
cover
problem.
this number.
That's right.
And so I think that's what, at some point, that's the detail. But, you know, I think you just got to be really careful, because you don't want to make, like, the climate at the school, you don't want staff feeling, you know, you can't,
Under siege.
I don't know how you do it.
But remember, just keep in mind that we're not taking $900,000 off of what we're spending today, right? We're taking $900,000 off of the projected spending for next year. So the number's gone up, so I just haven't had a chance to really look and see what's really gone. I'm looking at some of these numbers. You know, why are we spending, you know, $53,000 more in operations and maintenance? We gave them a budget increase last year, I think, so, you know, maybe that could come down. Special ed's gonna come down, you know, and just curious. It's the first time we've seen this number. It
Yeah.
certainly hasn't been scrubbed all that
That's a
much.
good way to look at these numbers, and to steal a page from what Megan said a little while ago. Is there a way we can rethink the model of how certain things are done here that might be a better way of delivering product to our students?
Right,
And
that's
to
right,
that
Jeff.
point,
Yep.
I've said this since 2008. And I know we're gonna come up and discuss it at the next number, but I think we gotta look at what we get from CSSU. I think we gotta look at CY, which is gonna have another 10% increase. I don't feel comfortable saying yes to some programs when we haven't even started to look to see what it means to take that money out of our program. And so, you know, when you're looking at, do we deliver things differently? Is there a different way for us to do CY so that we're not spending $90,000 or $80,000? Or, you know, maybe we only have to spend half of that. I don't know.
Is our cap particularly restricted?
Our cap is bigger than anybody else's. Our problem is that we came down 70 kids over the last 2 years, and it's a cost per pupil. So we just have incredibly bad timing, you know?
Well, but
Like,
we
no-
always said it was gonna come this way, right? The K-8s, we've been cutting for years, right? And it hadn't hit the high school yet. Now the decline in enrollment is finally hitting the high school.
Well, no, because we've had it for the last couple of years, but we just happen to have this huge reduction and a cap.
And a cap at the same time.
We could usually sell these things because you say our budget's not going up, right? We're not spending more. We're just
Right.
reinvesting in the kids, and the community's always thought that it was the right thing to do, but now the state's saying, well, we don't care if that's the right thing to do. You get a cap anyway. And then to the point of what the legislature's gonna do, I think we settle on a number and the legislature does or doesn't do what it's gonna do. We just have to go forward with what we think is right.
So what's the point of the cap in the legislature?
If they're trying to
keep
get to a no more than a
overall.
2% increase across the state.
Based on, just
Equalize.
Student counts. Well, why 2%?
yeah,
Made it up.
It's a nice number.
okay, it was a number, okay. But there wasn't any
A little bit, no.
data behind it to.
No, it was the end of the session type deal, right?
Well, they put all this work in, you know, Act 46 is this whole governance thing, but the governance thing's gonna take a couple years to bear any fruit as far as reducing spending, and so they said, well, we can't wait that long. We need a stopgap, so this cap thing is a 2-year plug before the
So it's
anticipated
it's an
savings from the
artificial cap
governance.
based on-
It's a way of some people trying to balance the state budget because they don't have to put so much money into the educational fund, which is already being robbed.
So have we given Adam what he needs? I mean, do we
No, I
have a
don't think
sense from the board?
Well,
No, not yet.
Could I ask a question now on one of the categories, like rental? What does rental mean? Is that like facilities rental? Or is it equipment rental?
What line are you on?
She's on
it's
the
on
object
54410. Third cluster down on
Yeah.
the first page. I think it's the first page. Second page.
Rental,
Is that,
Give a first.
I don't know, is that just facilities or is it equipment? Is it?
But we do rent space for
We
the
do.
life program, I think, but I don't know if
For
that's
what?
what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to get into the details with
I
that.
was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably
Things like that.
things like the life program, renting out that space. I'd have to get into the details of it to tell you for sure.
All right.
So we did the tiers of reductions in the past, right? And could we set it up so like the first set of reductions are the ones that, I don't know, using what they did in special education, you know, we've reduced paraprofessionals and have one professional instead. I don't know, just kind of like being as efficient as if we're not efficient now. You know, this is creating efficiencies, would be like the tier 1 cuts to be able to do that. And then tier 2 cuts would be, I don't know, and then tier 3 cuts would be like directly impacting the education, which would be, I don't know, maybe that's the way to go about doing it.
I'd like to see all the classes that are under 15.
Right, I mean.
And some of them are by design, some of them aren't, you know. I'd like to see, is there 3 or 4 classes that we could say this class could be taken either through the virtual college or through the dual enrollment program. I think the life team sports, what happens if we just do with life team sports, you know? That's the kind of stuff, you know, is there things that,
I guess what I sort of feel like you pay me to do that, and if you want, what would be helpful for me is if there was a number that you wanted me to get to, so that if you want to see what 960 looks like,
yep.
I
Yes.
can absolutely do that, and then work back from there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
I think
So,
that's a good thing.
Now, is that something that I would be presenting on December 2nd, or is that something I'd be presenting on December 15th? Because if I'm presenting it on December 2nd, that gets a little bit more challenging, because I feel like I don't think it's ethical to come to the board and talk about people's positions publicly when they know, you know,
That they don't,
Yeah.
right.
they know who they are. So that, there's a lot of communication that I would need to do between now and then, and we have, it's not a lot of time.
Yeah, because we only have 3 meetings, you can't blow off the first one.
Yeah. So are you feeling like December 2nd is the date for that? I
But you
mean, we're
won't
gonna
even
need
have
all,
had
I
it.
think you're right, and we're gonna need, if that's the date, I'll make it work. I mean, it's just that
But,
we're gonna
yeah,
need the meetings, I think.
Can we go into executive session for that, Cindy? It seems,
Yeah.
You can do some of it, yes. I'd have to look at the rules again, but I know it's happened in the past.
That would be,
That would make me feel more comfortable.
but I don't think we're going to be saying, well, I don't know, maybe we would, you're right, we would be.
Could you, instead of being specific about particular, it probably is obvious,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
courses or
That's where I was
subject
going
matter,
to.
Yeah.
We're
give
not
us,
saying
say, you know,
linguistics, I
this
was
will
saying
probably
English, but-
mean, two people in the language department and 3 in the math department and 2 in the science department and no more sports and, except for, or whatever, or whatever. And maybe that kind of, sort of thinking about it in that way, but
I mean, you could do it, I suppose there's a way to do it where it's just general teachers, but if the minute you put it by department, then people, there's a seniority list, people know who they are.
Right.
I met with a teacher today who's highly anxious and saying, am I gonna have a job next year? Am I, and I don't know.
yeah, right?
I mean, the list would look like this: personnel cuts, ops and maintenance cuts. It would have to be so generic.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think it would.
Figure it out.
And speaking to the question of class sizes and those types of things, I think whatever we would bring forward would be based on the rationale of that. So, I have a PowerPoint somewhere here that has all of our class data and those types of numbers, and I can bring that in a second as well. And I think that's been a typical presentation,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I did the spreadsheet that one year, is because that
Yeah.
presentation is interesting but not really useful. It has like a lot of averages and it's.
I'm okay with the 15th. I think you're trying to be real sensitive, and I think it's probably appropriate.
The 16th.
And you might
And the
have more
15th.
But
information.
even
what
with
are we gonna
executive
talk about
session,
on
I
the
mean, what,
16th?
we want
And then we
to
have to decide by January, right?
Right, we have 3
That's
net
right.
meetings. We just,
We want to do it, whatever we want to do well. Not that I should be saying we since I'm not on the board, overstepping my bounds. I mean, don't think about, I want you to do what you feel is right. And I appreciate being sensitive to me and the communication I need to have. I'm gonna make it work, whatever that has to be. It's not gonna be fun either way.
Yeah.
So then, does that mean December 2nd, we start talking about some options, and then we get to think about them, and then
Yeah.
discuss on the
No,
16th?
no, yeah.
I think we have to.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking the 15th, it's the 16th.
It's the 16th.
Generally what we do is people have questions, we have
So you-
one person collect them, I'll be happy to volunteer if people want to send me, if you look it over and you have questions. You send them to me and I'll try to put them all into one thing, and then Adam can be a little more prepared rather than us zinging him with questions.
Yeah,
cold.
don't
Yeah.
do it now.
And if you have ideas, I mean, I think Ray's point is really good, is that my problem with the tiers at different points has been administration coming in with a cut that I don't understand, because I don't know why they haven't taken it to something else instead.
Right.
You know, and so if you have a question or you have an idea that you want to be sure that Adam has addressed in some way, then we should provide him with that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because frankly, Adam could come in, and not that he would, some more integrity in this, but he could come in and say, well, we're eliminating all sports, all music, and all languages, and that's the only way I can get it, you know? And then that's not gonna be very fulfilling to any of us. So,
I am not gonna play games.
Nah.
That's not.
Yeah. I trust you.
Yeah. But there are, I mean, but just from my, there are going to be consequences.
Right,
You
yes.
know, particularly within the school. And, you look at, for instance, the leadership team alone, you think about, geez, I have to make reductions there. I've got to talk to that member of the team and say, it's not that we don't value you,
Right,
in comparison with the other 6 members of this team, but, I mean, so it does create some culture and climate within the school that, I mean, you've been through this before. I don't know that.
Not to this
Have we seen
extent.
a million before?
No,
never,
nothing like
never
this.
this much.
Not to this extent.
Percentage-wise, we did in Charlotte, it was not easy. And I remember a teacher that we had to cut sat in the audience and begged for her job, and it was one of the most excruciating meetings. It wasn't, these are people's lives. That's
Right.
right.
I would imagine it'll be a good turnout.
Yeah.
Do we have any more discussion on this topic?
Not for today.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is there a good place to find out what the account numbers and descriptions, what's being done? Is there a good
You know
place
what,
that I
there
can go
is,
to?
But all these
So I'd like
numbers
to
aren't.
have it, the key
Bob put
thoughts.
together a budget
Buddy, last year he put it
last year,
together.
so.
What-
Cindy, would you
what
ask
each one
Bob
of
to
these
put
numbers
that
have?
up somewhere we can look at it? Because it was a great decoder ring for some of these things.
Because that would help answer a lot of my questions, like what's in this.
Yeah, it
one
might. I mean, I think
specific
they're kind of generic.
In the
Yeah.
old days, we used to get 30-page budgets.
Yes, I
Remember
know.
that, with
Yes, I do.
everything
Well, we
all
get more, we get a person.
I used to go.
No, we used to get, this
Write down each one
department
of
by
these.
object.
I ask, because I don't know what's in a freshman program.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can kind of come up with things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
May not answer all your questions, but
Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
a place to start.
And I would ask for your patience as, it's funny, you form a relationship with a budget over time.
Mhm.
And it's, for me, I'm speaking a new language this year, looking at this budget, and I was so, the old budget, you go, oh, that's 2210.
I think it's just weird, because I just got myself kind of excited about not having to get the whole 900, but the voters are going to decide if we need to get the whole 960. So eventually, we could have to do it anyway, even if we say we're going to make really thoughtful, good decisions and not come up with all that. We might have to at the end of the day anyway, so. Better have a discussion sooner rather than later.
Okay, I'm going to move on to action matters. Do I have a motion to approve the purchase services on page 56, which was not in my packet?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't in mine.
And that is that grid of, what is it?
You have enough.
ITCY, food, ELL, and
Right.
that's it.
So sure,
So do I?
Sure.
Huh?
It's not in the packet.
It's not in the packet.
That was good. So
It's
sure.
online.
It's that
It's
one
online.
grid,
It's this one.
yeah, that one.
The one that's
It's upside down. Yeah, that
that's
one.
it.
There you go.
So
Thanks.
what we're approving is whether or not we want
Want
to
to-
And there's
buy these
for
services from
CVU,
central office,
that
as
is
opposed to
probably-
delivering them ourselves.
And that's the one that's 186.
It's just this page.
I
Are
don't
we
think so.
voting
No,
on?
these are
Individuals?
service.
Oh, right, IT,
what-
CY.
Huh?
Yes.
No, I had it first, but no one gave me a second.
I'll second.
Okay,
ELO, there's us.
okay.
5332.
I don't
Okay,
know what's in there.
discussion on this?
What if we can we approve them individually? I don't feel comfortable approving CY. The other ones I think we are kind of tied to, but CY seems to be a program that there could be other ways to deliver. Could be different ways of doing things. It's $80,000. Then we'd only have to find 880,000.
What are we voting on? Are we voting on specific prices here, or are we just voting on whether or not we want to purchase the service?
Well, sort
Right.
of to Lynn's point, like the IT and what were the other ones on there?
Transportation, IT.
No, IT, food, and ELL.
ELO.
So those three were just voting to participate, right? Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
So the,
I think Polly,
What?
Cindy would like to be recognized.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out what you were saying to me.
CSSU is fine with CY being pulled out. If you want to either do that through a friendly amendment, we're prepared to handle that.
Okay.
If you can approve everything else tonight, that's fine.
So,
we're not voting on a budget item, we're not voting on dollars, we're just voting on
When
participation.
participating in the service.
Participating in.
So the SU board is the one who votes on the dollars. And
Ah.
right now, the SU board has challenged them to stay under our 2%.
And what's the CSSU increase right now?
It's got special ed in there, which they've
Oh.
just spent, an hour
Right,
telling
right,
us is
right,
too
right.
high, so it's
Okay.
hard to tell.
Yeah.
But Otherwise, it's pretty
revenue.
close, I think. I don't have it in front of me now.
The official one, it's 6.15 for the whole budget. To Jean's point, the core services and special ed are in there right now. Special ed is at 7.27, but we saw a pretty drastic reduction there right so far. Core services, which you don't get to vote on theoretically, is 3.38%, but the purchase services number hasn't. That'll be at the next SU board meeting.
And the
So can
CSSU
I
board is-
amend?
So
Do we
do
have
I-
to friendly amend
Yep.
Friendly
to
amendment.
approve the purchase
Without
services with
CY.
the exception of CY?
Whoever first and seconded have to accept that, I forget.
So
who
are
did.
those numbers that we have, there are percentages set, or are they gonna fluctuate too with?
We don't know what the numbers are on those things yet. They can't really do the numbers until they know how many schools they're dividing the stuff by and providing services to. So what we're doing here is saying, yes, we don't want to burden Adam with, doing IT. We want to leave it,
Not if you want it done.
Sean
well.
used to say, not if you want me to stay.
I'm not there yet.
Right. So it's IT, transportation, and.
No, IT,
Oh,
food,
EL.
and ELL.
Yeah.
Not transportation. Why isn't transportation? Oh, because it's centralized, we get to vote on that, that's right.
Okay, so, Robert's rules. Do I?
Whoever had, I don't remember who had the
I
first and
made the
second.
friendly
And
amendment.
I made the, second.
So if the first and second are okay with the friendly amendment, then.
Okay, so if the first and second are, can we vote on the,
I have one more question.
Yep.
Who provides ELL then? I mean, how is that, from whom do we purchase ELL?
Supervisory union.
Oh, okay.
CSSU has
Okay.
ELL
We don't
teachers.
purchase
Yeah. So we,
Special ed.
So there are certain things that we don't get a choice on. So special ed, transportation, and core services being the superintendent's office, we don't get to decide whether or not we want to participate. Because by statute and by being part of the SU, we have to, we get an allocation to fund those things. So we don't get to vote on those. These three, we could say we don't want to buy them from the SU, we want to provide them ourselves. But it's always been more efficient to do it centralized. So that's really what we're deciding now is, do we want to continue that model?
Do we still know it's more efficient?
I would,
It's a
My
good
preference.
question,
Say
very good
yes,
question.
Especially like food service, because it's just one contract that they're buying from one, all the schools are buying from one vendor.
No, they're not. That's not nurses, that's,
Yeah.
that's what we're paying for though, because food service isn't in our budget.
Food service doesn't appear in, isn't part of the $960,000 challenge unless you're doing a subsidy, which you do not do. So that's a separate budget. It's in your purchase services list, but it is not part of the budget you'll have voted in. It's an enterprise fund.
So more companies.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, the line item 53320 CSSU service, is that this?
I have no idea. Because
The service, yes, CSSU services is purchase services versus CSSU assessment, which is the services you're assessed for just by being part of the supervisory unit. So that's your human resources, your superintendent's office, and fiscal.
The assessment.
Yep.
So the services,
Inspection.
this is part of the services.
Okay. Can we vote on this one?
I'm ready.
Okay, all those in favor of purchasing the services with the exception of CY, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. We've purchased approved services, or approved purchase services with the exception of CY. And then we have 7.2. Do I have a motion to approve the January 19th meeting, which is an added meeting to discuss further Act 46? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Hold on. No, Tika needs help. Who wants officially to be the mover?
I'll move.
Whatever.
Totally
Pick a
different
name.
person.
Outside Lorna.
All right.
So much excitement.
Okay.
A little action.
Do we need a discussion on this
It's
one?
getting pretty bad.
Just
What
so
are we
people know
doing
what this is, this meeting will be the opportunity for the boards to weigh in on the report that's going to the Agency of Education. So
It's listed as a future meeting.
That's Act,
I know,
that's Act
has-
46.
Act 46,
It's
yeah,
Act
not the
46.
CAPS part, the governance part.
Is
but
that
we're
gonna be
already
available before that meeting, though? If you
Depends how
can't
fast we read it.
Okay.
Literally, I mean, it's,
So the January 19th, I thought it was another budget meeting, but it's not. It's
no,
an Act
this is
46.
Act 46 governance
Okay.
review of the report before it goes off to the Agency of Education.
Will there be, with the other committees, like the finance subcommittee and that, will they be doing a readout as well? Jean?
It should be part of the report,
It should be part of this report,
Right.
so it will all be together?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, shall we vote? All those in favor of the January 19th meeting for further clarification and report of, that's going to wherever it's going?
Agency of Education.
Agency of Education. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Oh, fast.
There's only one comment I have on this, is that in the special meeting, Jean Jensen called the meeting to order. I believe I
There's no
did.
discussion on the consent.
Okay.
agenda.
Then I will tell somebody to figure that one, okay.
You'd have to pull it up.
Never mind.
But you can have it corrected.
I will have it corrected. Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? The ayes have it, the consent agenda is approved. Sorry about trying to have discussion on that.
Rookie mistake.
I know, that was a rookie mistake. I just want to remind the board that the two budget meetings at 5:30 on December 2nd and 16th, they are in a different room other than this one.
Oh, no.
Please note that. And then there's also a third budget meeting on January 6th in the same room. Yes, I believe Sandy had put all the budget buddies, on the email list. The other thing is, I just want to remind people that we do not have a regular CVU budget meeting during the months of December and January. Regular meetings, I'm
Board
sorry. We
meetings.
have budget meetings, but no regular meetings. And, okay, do I have a motion to declare us into executive session?
Move.
Second. Okay.
So we need to go in the other room and you'll declare us adjourned from there, so these guys don't have to hang around, right?
Right.
I don't know if we can go in that room.
We'll find the place. Adam's got
Sure.
I have
keys.
keys.
Adam's got keys.